The age of thrash metal is here. Metallica has arrived, and it's time to hit the lights. Welcome, metal enthusiasts, to a brand new episode of the Metal Dude Abides. I am so excited for tonight because one of my favorite bands of all time and one of the biggest heavy metal bands of all time has arrived on the scene. Metallica. Metallica is going to go on a 10-year run that is pretty much unparalleled in metal history. They are about to go on a tear. But how did we get here? Well, in 1980, we had something called the new wave of British heavy metal. Shortly thereafter, in 1981, we had the beginning of the California metal movement, the big hair movement, whatever you want to say. The LA scene was just a hotbed for young, new heavy metal bands. Now, why do I bring up these two movements? Because Metallica was part of that LA movement, but kind of stood out like a sore thumb because they were heavily influenced by the new wave of British heavy metal, while most of the bands in the LA scene were following more in the tracks of, say, a Motley Crue or a Kiss. So Metallica, who's the members? James Hetfield and Lars Ulrich and Dave Mustaine were kind of the founding members of Metallica, but they were kind of a little bit out of sync with this big LA scene. They hired bassist Cliff Burton. Now, Cliff only took the gig on one condition, that the band would move up to San Francisco. What a great step in the right direction for Metallica, out of the more glamorous LA scene to the Bay Area scene, more grittier, heavier, thrashier. So Metallica begins to put together their career, starts to put together, and are right on the verge of their very first album when more trouble hits. They decide that they need to part with guitarist Dave Mustaine. The band wasn't getting along very well. So enter Kirk Hammett, who was brought in from another Bay Area thrash band, Exodus. And there you have it. Metallica, as we know and love them today, was formed. Now one of the things that I really love about this era of Metallica is because of the influence of Dave Mustaine. Dave Mustaine, of course, goes on to form the band Megadeth. So we're talking about two of the big four thrash bands. Megadeth and Metallica kind of represented here. And if we're being 100 with my audience, I believe that Metallica and Megadeth are really the big two of the big four. Metallica and Megadeth, two of my favorite bands of all time. So this part of the Metallica discography is a real sentimental favorite. Metallica, of course, at this point, it's a little bit hard to believe as they were putting out these phenomenal albums. And even though they were very influential in the thrash era, this is still hard to believe an underground band. Metallica doesn't really start having commercial success for several years later. So at this point, Metallica, while being big influences, are not really getting a lot of commercial success. So if you weren't into Metallica way back in the beginning, you may not have caught on to this album. And it would be a darn shame to walk away from this episode not being familiar with one of the greatest heavy metal albums of all time. Let's go track by track through the epic album, Kill 'Em All. The opening track of Kill 'Em All is a song by the name of, as I alluded to earlier in this video, Hit the Lights. I love a good album opener, and this one is an absolute scorcher. And not only is it a great album opener, but it's a great career opener. This is the song that you're introducing yourself to the metal community. So Hit the Lights is kind of the absolute most perfect career opener that I can think of. Maybe going back all the way to like Black Sabbath, Black Sabbath. This is a great one. This is one of the first songs that James Hetfield wrote way back when he was in a band by the name of Leather Charm. He brought it to Metallica. Him and Lars fixed a few things up, and voila. It's also very infamous because this is the first song ever recorded by Metallica. If you were with us a couple of weeks ago, we were highlighting it on the album Metal Massacre. Metal Massacre was a compilation album that was released to highlight that underground LA scene when Metallica was still part of that. Now, the interesting point of that is Hit the Lights on the very first Metal Massacre. The solo on this is done by a gentleman by the name of Lloyd Grant. But James Hetfield did not like the way that one turned out, so they re-recorded it and did one where Dave Mustaine did the solo. That's also the version that's on the now infamous No Life Till Leather demo album that they put out. And here on Kill 'Em All, we see the solo being done by, of course, their new guitarist, Kirk Hammett. So you have a chance to go look and listen to all three of those versions. Pick which one you like the best. I think it's clear that the one with Kirk Hammett wins hands down. The second track on the album is one that even the casual Metallica fan has probably heard. The Four Horsemen. Now, interestingly enough, this is one of those songs that was written by Dave Mustaine, and in fact, he wrote the riff for this, basically a rip-off of Lynyrd Skynyrd's song "Sweet Home Alabama." But when Dave Mustaine wrote this song, it was called Mechanics. If you're interested in that version, you can find it on Megadeth's first album, as Dave Mustaine puts out the Mechanics version on Killing Is My Business. But after Dave left the band, Metallica turned it around and rewrote the song to the Four Horsemen. Now, I'm here to tell you, in my humble opinion, the Four Horsemen version of this is much better than Mechanics and really shows off right here the more sophisticated songwriting abilities at this time with James and Lars. They were really ahead of their time with their craft. I think their songwriting abilities, as far as lyrics go, was a little more advanced than Dave's. At this point, Dave finds his groove with Megadeth, but right here, Lars and James take a song that was meh and turns it into an all-time Metallica classic. The third track on this album is one of my all-time favorite Metallica songs, Motor Breath. And even though it's like the third song on the album, it's kind of a deep track. Not a lot of people know of this song. It's not one that Metallica plays a lot on their sets, but it's an absolute barn burner. Of course, this is a song that kind of celebrates their hard-charging, alcohol-soaked lifestyle. But a word of caution, as in 1983, here's Metallica celebrating their partying lifestyle. But, 15 to 20 years later, that lifestyle catches up to them. And, and they are in a variety of health issues, rehab centers, broken up marriages, etc. So kids, even though the song glorifies heavy and strong alcohol use, don't try this at home. I think Metallica would share those sentiments to this day. One of the things I want to say here is that I go to a lot of concerts and I'm usually one of the older people at some of these metal shows, and I've been very impressed with this younger generation. They don't seem to be making the same mistakes our generation made with alcohol and drugs. So, kids, this is that time of the episode where I say, don't do alcohol, don't do drugs. They're no good for you. And learn from Metallica's mistakes. Don't get started on this stuff. It will wreck your life eventually. The next song on the album, Jump in the Fire, is another song that was written by Dave Mustaine. Has one of the most catchy opening riffs of any song on the album. This song also was rewritten a little bit by James Hetfield. And I think it's time we talked about James Hetfield's voice. Because if, for those of you who may or may not be aware, James Hetfield actually tried to replace himself, was not happy with his vocals, and recruited Armored Saint lead singer John Bush to join the band. John politely turned them down, and James kept his gig. And if you know anything about this channel, I am a huge fan of John Bush, but I am also equally a fan of James Hetfield. Hetfield has that perfect voice for Metallica, that growl, that grit, and it's displayed really well here. One of the best sung songs on this entire album. Hetfield's performance on Jump in the Fire is worth a listen. The fourth song on the album is called Anesthesia Pulling Teeth, and it is a bass solo written by Cliff Burton and performed in all of the early days of Metallica, and it is absolutely stunning. You don't see a lot of bass solos in heavy metal, but this one may be the greatest bass solo song of all time. Again, real heavy bass here by Cliff Burton, some Lars Ulrich drumming, but for the most part, this is all Cliff Burton. Cliff Burton, of course, has a couple of claims to fame on this album. Number one, thank goodness Cliff moved the band up to San Francisco. Number two, he named this album. Again, there's a funny story that goes with this. Originally, this album was going to be named Metal Up Your Ass, and there was a album cover and everything designed where a hand comes up out of the toilet with a switchblade, the whole works. But the record label was a little bit hesitant to put something like that out. Really didn't think that people would put it in their stores. So they strongly suggested to Metallica to change it. Cliff, not being very happy about that, said, kill them all. And there we go with the title of this album. So not only did Cliff help move them to the Bay Area, not only did he help name the other album, he puts on one of the greatest bass solos ever put down on vinyl right here, Anesthesia Pulling Teeth. Now, immediately following Anesthesia Pulling Teeth comes one of the heaviest, one of the thrashiest metal songs on the entire album, Whiplash. This was the first single that Metallica released, interestingly enough, if you want to know that trivia. And this is also the very first song I ever heard from Metallica. So this is the song that when I first heard this song, I was like, wow, this is the heaviest song at that time I think I'd ever heard. Really made me intrigued as to what else Metallica had to offer. So Whiplash, many people say that this is the song that kind of starts this whole Bay Area thrash movement. Again, because it's one of those, the very first single that Metallica put out, and because it has just got speed and attitude in spades. If you're familiar with my format, every time that I do an album review, I'll tell you what my favorite songs on the track are, and I always tell you what my least favorite song on the album is. Even if that album is fantastic, even if I like all the songs like I do on this album, there is not a bad song on the track. But I will say, if I had to pick my least favorite song, it would be right here, Phantom Lord. This was another of the songs written by Dave Mustaine. And it seems like every song up to this point has had something about it that made it stand out, that made it spectacular. Phantom Lord, nothing wrong with this song. It just doesn't have anything element of it that really makes it memorable to compete with all these other fantastic songs. The rest of this album is spectacular, and it starts right here with No Remorse. This song has one of the best guitar solos to start and has one of the fastest finishes to end. I think this is really where the song that I really started noticing Kirk Hammett's skills. Kirk Hammett famously studied under the fantastic guitarist Joe Satriani, also from the Bay Area, and he really shows off his chops on this song. It's kind of a bold move. You don't really see like a guitar solo type intro too many times, but Metallica says to heck with convention, we're going to put it right here. Another one of those deep tracks that I really like. Check out No Remorse. This album occurs obviously very early in the Metallica catalog and doesn't really have a lot of the hits that would come on subsequent albums. I talked about the Four Horsemen. Here's the other quote unquote hit of the album. Oh, baby, is this a good one? Seek and Destroy. Once again, that opening riff is instantly recognizable. This has been a staple of their live shows ever since the beginning. And when they belt into this one, that iconic riff, the crowd goes crazy. Seek and Destroy, one of the early songs that really put Metallica on the map. If for whatever reason you've been under a rock and have never heard this song, if you say if there's one song I should go out and check out on this album, I would probably recommend you start right here. One of the best, Seek and Destroy. There are layers and levels of albums. And the highest level of album you can be is a perfect album and a Hall of Fame level album. I believe Kill 'Em All rises to the perfect level and the Hall of Fame level. And one of the attributes of a really good Hall of Fame level metal album is you got to start off fast and you got to start off impressive. You got to get them right off the bat, and we saw that with Hit the Lights. But just as important is you got to finish strong. You don't want an album, kind of tailing off at the end, kind of some weak material to fill out the rest of the album. You want to finish strong, and you can't find a stronger close than Metal Militia. Ooh, this song, one of the fastest, most aggressive songs on the entire album. We haven't talked a lot about Lars Ulrich, and so I'm gonna, correct that right now. Lars Ulrich, one of the greatest drummers in heavy metal history, and if you really come back to this album in particular, these early days of Metallica, man, I don't know how the drummer can keep up with everything that's happening. These songs are fast, they're aggressive, and Lars is absolutely punishing those drums. I did make a joke if you were with us a couple of weeks ago when we were talking about the best instrumental performances of the year. When you see Lars Ulrich now, and they say, "Oh, we're going to pull out some of the old stuff," he's got to take a couple of drinks, take some vitamins. These songs are very difficult to play, and I think sometimes he's like, "Why did we play songs so fast?" And I have to recreate those now. But anyway, really good stuff. A great opening, a great close. This is a Hall of Fame level album from start to finish. But before we move on, I do want to mention, because on a lot of the early editions of this, there was 2 bonus tracks that also talked about Metallica's love of the new wave of British heavy metal. Many of the original albums had both Am I Evil, the cover of the fantastic Diamond Head song, and Blitzkrieg, obviously from the band Blitzkrieg. Metallica takes these 2 kind of underrated new wave of British heavy metal songs and makes them into household songs. They're also, I'm going to mess up the name of this, but Metallica put out an entire album of their cover songs, and I believe the name of that is called Garage Day Revisited. My neighbor loves that album because he's shooting off fireworks right in the middle of my video. Can you believe it? Anyway, fireworks going off, my dog's running around scared. Craziness here at the household. But I did want to mention, if you get an older copy of Kill 'Em All, please check out their renditions of Am I Evil and Blitzkrieg. I in particularly love their version of Am I Evil. Now, having said all that, we're going to get to the crux of today's episode by looking at the best hard rock songs and heavy metal songs of 1983. Let's start with the best hard rock songs. Before we get to our top 5 nominees, I do want to bring out an honorable mention, and that would go to Journey for their song Separate Ways. I don't consider Journey at this point of their careers to be hard rock any longer. They seem more mainstream rock to me. However, I may be wrong. I may be in the minority, because I'll tell you this, I go to a lot of concerts, and a lot of times the walk-up music for these bands to get everybody hyped up before they come on stage is this bad boy right here, Journey, Separate Ways. So I did not consider it for Hard Rock Song of the Year, because I think it's more, again, pop. But if that's your cup of tea, it also comes out in 1983, so go check it out. All right, our 5 nominees. Nominee number 1, Fastway, Say What You Will. Again, this is Fast Eddie Clarke's first album outside of Motorhead. I think his work with Motorhead much better, much more consistent, but this very first Fastway album is pretty darn good, and that opening riff on this song is absolutely spectacular. Our second nominee, Rainbow with Street of Dreams. Now, I much prefer the Ronnie James Dio version of Rainbow. I prefer the Graham Bonnet version of Rainbow, but you can't deny the melodic beauty of this song. I've always liked it. Even though Rainbow's gone a little, maybe there should be maybe more in that Journey category at this point, pretty mainstream. Anytime you get to hear Joe Lynn Turner, one of the great vocalists, and anytime you get to hear Ritchie Blackmore, and like I said, the lyrics and on this song are fantastic. Kind of the last great Rainbow song right here, Street of Dreams. Our third nominee, it's a swan song from Thin Lizzy, Cold Sweat. That riff from John Sykes made me a John Sykes fan for the next 2 decades, man. I followed John Sykes wherever he went, largely because I love this song. I love that riff. Our fourth nominee, Y&T, with their song Midnight in Tokyo. This is another kind of swan song in a way. Y&T has been on an absolute tear. Some of the best hard rock albums, Mean Street, Black Tiger. But after this album, they also kind of go off in a commercial direction, and I didn't really care for them much after this point. So, again, one last great song here, this song, Midnight in Tokyo. And finally, another band that kind of fades after this, Zebra, with their song, Tell Me What You Want. One of the great vocal performances in the history of metal. If you're not familiar with Zebra, kind of a Led Zeppelin sound to them. The lead singer sounds just like Robert Plant. It's amazing. They had a couple of really great songs, but my favorite of these, right here, Tell Me What You Want. And the winner is... Maybe I can get my neighbor to shoot his fireworks off just as I'm about to announce the winner, instead of just randomly shooting off during my video, right? We got to sync this thing up here. But our winner is Thin Lizzy with Cold Sweat. I've talked about this album on a variety of episodes. You guys are probably starting to figure out it's one of my favorite albums of all time. There you go. He came close this time, everybody. But to me, the very last Thin Lizzy album is their very best, Thunder and Lightning, and the very best song on it is Cold Sweat. Go check it out. 1983, best hard rock song of the year. But let's go through the 5 nominees for best metal song next. Before we get to the Heavy Metal Song of the Year nominees, just as we did on the hard rock side, let's do a couple of honorable mentions. Our first honorable mention is from one of my all-time favorite bands, Riot. If you've been watching the channel since the very beginning, you'll know I had their album up on my backdrop for year one. They put out an album that year, Born in America, and the song Heavy Metal Machine is one of the all-time Riot classics. Unfortunately, the reason I mention this here is this is the end of the Rhett Forrester era. He was their second lead singer. He's the lead singer on classic Riot albums Restless Breed and again here in Born in America. But unfortunately for Riot, they've been dropped from their record label. They were picked up by more of an independent label. If you look at the packaging around Born in America, you can tell they're back on a little bit of a budget. I think the boys in the band just said, enough struggling. Good news, though, Riot does come back a few years later, pretty much remade, with just really guitarist Mark Reale, really the only one who comes into the band with its third incarnation. But nonetheless, this really closes the book on a chapter. I got really lucky. Me and some friends in college, the friends in college were from Seattle. They were very into the metal scene, and we just happened to stumble upon, a small club in Phoenix. Riot was playing there on this tour. And yeah, again, it was kind of, I always thought, Riot deserved a lot better, but we were in just a small club, just a few people there, and we just rocked out. What a great night that was. So as sad as I am to say, goodbye to Riot. Again, they will be back a few years down the road. The other honorable mention is from the band Crocus and their amazing song, Screaming in the Night. I can't believe Heavy Metal Machine and Screaming in the Night couldn't even make my top 5 this year. That's how loaded this field is. I think you'll agree when you see the nominees, but I just wanted to just make a small note about Crocus because I feel a little bad. They're one of those bands, they put out an album in 1983, Headhunter, that if you've never heard this album, please go out of your way to find it. One of the best heavy metal albums of all time. It kind of gets lost in the shuffle because, like I said, when you see these nominees, it's like someone's got to be on the cutting edge here, and unfortunately, they didn't quite make it on the right side of that cut. But Crocus, this I think is by far their greatest album, one of their greatest songs of all time, and I just thought that since they didn't make the nominees, we're not going to talk about them much after this year, as they kind of go off in a little bit of a commercial direction, kind of lose their way a little bit. I did want to mention it because, again, as we look back at 1983, I want to point out some of these great albums and some of these great songs. So go check out Crocus, Headhunter. You will be very impressed, I guarantee it. But the 5 nominees. Nominee number 1, you'll know this one. The great German band Accept, with probably their biggest hit of all time, Balls to the Wall. This, Udo Dirkschneider and the boys are really at the height of their powers. One of the most beloved heavy metal songs of all time. Balls to the Wall, what a great one. Our second nominee, we spotlighted him here last week, Dio, with the great song Rainbow in the Dark. If you want to hear a great heavy metal song that mixes power and melody, go right here to Rainbow in the Dark, an all-time classic. Our third nominee, Iron Maiden, with their song The Trooper. Boy, Iron Maiden is so good right now. You could pick 2 or 3 songs off this album to put as one of the best songs of the year, and I wouldn't complain. But this is really, when you think about Maiden, and when you think about Steve Harris, when you think about Bruce Dickinson, you think about that gallop. The Trooper has a fantastic gallop. Love, love, love this song. The fourth nominee, we just got through talking about him, Metallica, with, why not, The Four Horsemen. It's really between Four Horsemen and Seek and Destroy. Those 2 songs are legendary songs, but a slight nod for me to The Four Horsemen. And finally, the 5th and final nominee, another great band of the new wave of British heavy metal, Saxon, with, in my humble opinion, their greatest song, Power and the Glory. That is the title track off their latest album, and it is one song. I mean, I still have that song on so many playlists. It's ridiculous. Still one of my favorite songs of all time. And the winner is... These are some of the greatest heavy metal songs of all time. And I think this might be a bit of an upset winner. But the 1983 Best Heavy Metal Song of the Year has to go to Saxon, Power and the Glory. This was a tight one. Listen, we just got through saying this is probably the best Accept song. At least their most popular song. Fast as a Shark's probably their best song. Rainbow in the Dark, maybe the best song in the entirety of Dio's solo career. The Trooper is one of my absolute favorite Iron Maiden songs. Really, if I had to have a runner-up in this category, it's probably The Trooper. And, of course, The Four Horsemen, a legendary song by Metallica. But at the end of the day, this is the peak of Saxon. I love this song. I still play it. It's on a ridiculous number of playlists I have. If you ever hear one of my heavy metal playlists, you can almost count on not having to wait too long before you hear Saxon. Biff Byford and the boys really hit it out of the park with that one. Congratulations to Saxon. And going back, congratulations to Thin Lizzy, our two winners of the year for Hard Rock and Heavy Metal Song of the Year. Now, the Grammys that year picked The Police. And I really like The Police. And the song they picked was Every Breath You Take, which is a pretty good song. But you know what? If I was going to pick a Police song from 1983, it wouldn't even be this one. They had an album, Synchronicity. The title track on that song is just so good. A little bit heavier, lemmings, shiny metal boxes. You know the bit. Probably my favorite Police song of all time. It wouldn't be Every Breath You Take, although that's a very good song. So, again, if I'm going to go with a Police song, it isn't even going to be this one. So I'm going to give the best song of the year across the board. Once again, Saxon with their tremendous song, Power and the Glory. It's just going to sweep through everything this year. Poor Sting. I've been giving it to Sting. It seems like we're in that era where the Grammys are giving all sorts of awards to Sting. Sting's a great musician. But in my humble opinion, a little bit overrated. I think sometimes they get into these grooves where it's just like, well, Sting won it last year. Let's give it to him again this year. Again, big, popular band, talented band. No, I'm a fan of the Police, but just think the heavy metal in 1983 was a little bit better. But next week, everybody, we're going to talk about the best album of the year. And as you can see, by just going through the song of the year, the album of the year is going to face some very stiff competition. So you don't want to miss that episode. And the best way to not miss it, ring the bell, get subscribed. So every time we put out a new release, you are notified of it. We do this live every Tuesday at 7 p.m. Denver time. If you are subscribed to our channel and you've put on alerts, it'll give you like a 30-minute heads up that the Metal Dude's about to go live. We'd love to have you. Please give this video a thumbs up and put some comments in. What do you think the best album or the best song of 1983 is? What do you think the best hard rock song is? What do you think the best heavy metal song is? Anybody I missed? Feel free to put them in there. I love to chat and go down this memory lane with all the fans of heavy metal of the 80s. But in the meantime, this is the Metal Dude signing off. As always, take care.